Welcome one and welcome all. Those of you that are new here, if you're a therapist, you have lucked up on something today. This is a no gatekeeping conversation. I'm about to give you something that people actually pay me for. I'm about to give it to you for free. This is an important conversation because in 2026, the way that everything is going between the industry and the economy, there is no reason for any of us to be sitting around here scratching and surviving. We need to have these coins ready. So I want you to make sure we get lots of people in the room to get this information. Now, if you're new here, hey friend, hey, my name is Kavelin. I am a career design strategist for therapists, most of whom are starting, growing, or scaling a private practice. That's why I call myself the private practice bestie. Okay. I thoroughly believe that if you help people, you should be able to make good money. That's my whole shtick, okay? I'll talk about something clinical, but I do not practice clinically, so very rarely will you hear me say something about it, something clinical. But I always would tell you about how to have a successful business because I believe that peace and profit are not in competition. You get to have them both. Hence why I call my podcast Peace and Profit for Therapists. These are all ways that you can get information from me completely for free. I share on my podcast, on my YouTube, on my blog. You can get, my newsletter, all these different things so that you can constantly get the right information because so many therapists are working so hard for not enough money and they don't understand why. What I'm about to tell you right now is some good old fashioned therapist math that you should have gotten in grad school that I know that you didn't. And I'm about to give it to you for free. This is the kind of thing that I work with my one-on-one clients with, my group clients with, and I'm about to give you this information for free. And the reason is once you get this information, it changes everything. It changes how you look at your prices. It changes how you look at your business. It changes how you look at the potential for your career. It changes everything. Now, why do I care about this? So a couple things. Why do I care about this? I care because I want my communities to get good help. I want people to be able to have the mental health support that they need. And I also believe that you should be able, if you are a good person and you are helping people, you should be able to get paid well for it. I'm a preacher's kid, so I know what it's like when people help people all the time and never get paid for it. So I firmly believe that that's not the way it should be. But also, I because of the choice that I've made to be in and around the mental health space for so long, I also experienced a whole lot of economic hardship just trying to help people. So my background is in school counseling, and when I was a school counselor, I was making this. So this was some years ago, but I was making about 36.8 at the time. That was my full time salary. Now, my now ex-husband, we were married at the time. He was probably making about 28, 29. So we have four children and we were making combined about $65,000, $70,000. So we ended up having multiple jobs, okay? Multiple jobs. He's coaching football. I'm, working for Girl Scouts. I'm teaching this class. I'm going here. I mean, we're just doing all the things, okay? Trying to stretch it together, trying to make ends meet. And we were just clamoring, waiting to get to tax time. Anybody been in that situation? You're like, if I could just make it to tax time, I will finally be able to pay these bills and catch everything up and I will be able to survive. So we were clamoring to get to tax time because we were both working so hard. We just knew this was going to finally was going to give us some breathing room. And I don't know if you've ever used TurboTax before. But at the time I was using TurboTax. And so I'm putting in my numbers. I'm putting in this W-2 and this W-2. And it used to, and I don't know if it still does this, but it used to at the time, if you were putting in the numbers, right, your refund was going to keep climbing up. So you see the number going higher and higher. So I'm getting excited. I'm mentally spending this money and all the things, y'all. I am excited about this. And I get down to the last W-2. What do y'all think happened? What do you think happened? I get down to the last W-2. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. I put that in there and that number comes down and it comes down and it comes down. Now, I do not remember the exact numbers. I wish I did, but I know it was somewhere in the range of about $8,000 or $9,000 is what I was supposed to get. And it probably got down to maybe like 5 or 6, right? So still not bad money, right? But what I realized in that moment, the W-2 that I put in was less than what I was losing on my refund. And the reason being, I had made just enough to bump me up to the next tax bracket. So now I was not getting earned in them tax credit. I was not getting back all this extra. I was just getting enough. So I had worked my butt off. I had gotten up at 5 o'clock in the morning and driven 40 minutes across town to go take care of other people's children while my husband had to take our kids to before and after school care that I had to pay for. I drove a car my car was rough back in those days, okay? My car, I don't know if y'all probably haven't been as rough as I was, but I had a car that sometimes the transmission would slip. So you might get stuck in the wrong gear and couldn't go over 20 miles per hour. Okay, that's how your girl was living back in those days. And I'm going to school and I'm working and I'm taking care of other people's kids every single day. And I had done all of that and essentially felt like I had nothing to show for it. And what I decided that day is that I was done. I made a decision that I was done living like that and I was going to stop playing around and I was going to start my business. And I did. Fast forward a couple years. The first couple years were not profitable because the girl didn't know what I was doing. I did not know what I was doing. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of things that was not very productive and wasn't very profitable. But by that year 3, year 4, I got into my rhythm and I started signing 4-figure, 5-figure contracts. Then I came over to the practice where I had already been doing a little bit of coaching. I helped them get 5-figure, 6-figure contracts. And so I know how things can transform relatively quickly when you have the right mathing. So tonight I'm going to give y'all the math that will math so that you are not struggling. Okay. So when we start to talk about the math that doesn't math for therapists, there's a couple things I need you to understand. We never get taught this in grad school. In grad school, they teach you everything about being ethical, about being clinically sound, about protecting confidentiality. They teach you all of that. They don't say word one about how to get paid. So the things that I'm about to teach you, I had to actually invest to learn these things, time and money, because nobody was teaching this in grad school, okay? So there is a few things, everything except for how to get paid. In fact, they tell you not to even worry about the money. They tell you that you shouldn't be concerned about the money. They tell you should just do it for the love, do it for the passion, do it because you're helping people, as if that pays your bills. And what I like to say is when the electric company gives me a therapist discount, that's when I need to be worried about giving somebody else a discount. I can look for ways to be accessible in a way that is also profitable. That's why I'm having the sprint. And if you need some help on that, we'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. But I want you guys to understand we have to change our mindset, make a decision that, yes, I can help people, but I can also get paid. Okay? So there's 4 things that you have to understand when it comes to your money. You have to understand these 4 things: revenue, expenses, income or payroll, and profit. Revenue is the first thing. Revenue is the money that comes into your business. The revenue number that comes into your business is that gross amount of money that comes in. In general, therapy practices have a decent amount of revenue. From your revenue, which is all the money that comes in, you have to pay your expenses. I want you guys to understand something. And I've said this on multiple videos. I've probably even said it on lives before. In 2026, every expense that you have had probably in the last 5 years has gone up. Probably every single expense that you have, your Wi-Fi, your electricity, your EHR, your HP Inc., your cell phone, everything has gone up. If your revenue didn't go up the same amount, you already hurting. The CEUs, the license, the liability insurance, all of those things have to come off of your revenue. And so most people do not pay attention to these numbers. So your revenue is your first number. Your expenses is all the other things that you have to pay. Most people do not know this one thing that I teach all of my clients, which is your CPS, cost per session. Cost per session. That means, what does it cost you to have one appointment with your client? See, most people don't think about there being a cost. They think, well, I can just give them a $50 session because it doesn't cost me nothing. It's fine. No. Every time you have a session, there is a cost. every single time. You have a cost because you had to pay for the Wi-Fi, you had to pay for the EHR, you had to pay for the biller, you had to pay for the credit card processing. So every single time you have a session, it costs you money. And when you are not paying attention to that, you might not realize that cost per session is higher than you want it to be, and your numbers are not matching up. Cost per session is determined this way. You take all of the expenses that you have for the year or for the month if you haven't been in business for a whole year. Okay. So if you've only been in business for a month, you take everything you paid for during that month, your EHR, your Wi Fi, all those different things. You add up that whole number. Okay. And then you see how many sessions did I do during that period of time. And the number of sessions that you did during that time, that's how you're going to determine this. You're going to say, okay, I spent $1,000 on my expenses for my EHR, for my billing support, for my credit card processing. Maybe you got a little suite that you in. I spent $1,000, but I had 100 sessions. So I had 100 sessions last month and I spent $1,000. It only cost you $10 to deliver a session. That's not bad. That's not bad, right? $10 per session is your cost per session, okay? But look at how this number changes. Let's say you're paying for a suite. You went up and decided you was going to do EMDR this year. So you pay for an expensive training. Your expenses went up because your liability insurance went up. You decided to get licensed in another state. So this time your expenses was like $3,000, right? But you still had those same 100 sessions, 25 sessions a week. Now your cost per session is $30 per session. The average is somewhere between $20 and about $35 per session is what it costs you to deliver a session. So somebody type in the chat, doing therapy is not free. Every time you open up your Zoom, every time you get on that DoxyMe, every time you get on that Simple Practice, it is costing you money because people want to act like because we just talking that it's free. No. It is not free. It is not free. You are quite literally spending your money to do this work. So you have to understand your cost per session, your CPS, okay? When you know your cost per session, now you can decide what your cash pay rate should be. That's your CPR, because we all need to breathe. We need that CPR. We need that cash pay rate. Your cash pay rate, your CPR, should be set based upon your per session cost. So if you don't know what it costs you to put on a session and you're just randomly pulling a number from the sky for your cash pay rate, you might not even be profitable at all. How do you determine that number? So you determine it as soon as you have expenses. As soon as you have expenses, you have that. If you have no expenses yet, you haven't started yet, you can look at somebody else's price to give you to give you like an estimate, but you should have some idea of what you're going to be paying. So maybe you got a 60-day free trial of something, but you know what that's going to be next month. That's how you kind of give yourself an estimate, right? And you always want to estimate if you're starting brand new, you want to always estimate like I'm going to have less sessions, and then my price is going to go. So the cost per session is a dynamic number. It will change from time to time. It can go up if your sessions go down, right? Like it can be higher. It can go down if your expenses get lower or you have more sessions that you're delivering. So that's a dynamic number. You should always be checking it at least once a year, maybe even once a quarter if you're having lots of changes, okay? So you know what your cash pay rate is currently, $115. But now it's costing you $30 every time you have a session. So you think, oh, that's not that bad, because that means I'm coming back with like $85. Okay, that's not bad. But guess what? You haven't paid yourself yet. And here's where all my group practice owners, any group practice owners on here? If you're a group practice owner, this is probably where you got yourself in trouble. Okay? Because a group practice owner will say like, well, I can afford to go 60-40. I can afford to go 60-40 because, if I go 60-40, then I'll get $46 per session. But if your cost per session is already at 30 or 35 and you only getting 46 per session, you're not very profitable, right? So you have to know those numbers in order to choose the right price. Does that make sense, guys? You have to know your numbers in order to choose the right price. And one of the challenges is your cash pay rate may be 115, but that contractor rate might not be nowhere near that. Because what if your contractor rate is $90? Or God forbid you with Cigna and your contractor rate is $60 and it costs you $30 to go ahead and have one session. So if you're working with Cigna, you might only be making $30 a session. But we're not thinking about it like that. We think, oh, well, they gave me $60, that's fine. No, it cost you $30. So now you only got $30. So you keep working like, I don't understand how I keep having all these sessions and I never have any money. Because for half of your sessions, you're doing EAP. You want to be able to know what your cash pay rate is, to recognize what your average reimbursement rate is, because it's usually your contractor rate is lower. And you have to set your numbers so that they make sense with this. Because from your cash pay rate, your revenue, then comes your expenses. But either you have your own income or you have your payroll that you have to pay. And those two things, all those things have to be done before you get to the profit. The profit is what's left after all the bills are paid. And here's the thing people need to know. The majority of therapists right now are not profitable. They're not profitable because they're not paying themselves what they want to make. They got half their sessions are EAP sessions, so they only making $30 or $40 a session by the time they pay for their expenses. And the other half of their sessions are contracted, so they're making a little bit more, but they don't have enough cash pay clients to even be where they want to be financially. So the math ain't mathing. Right, taxes has to go in there with your expenses. So imagine that your expenses are $30 per session and 80 or 90% of your sessions are $60 sessions. You're never going to feel like you're making any money. You're never going to feel like you're making any money. No matter how many sessions you keep, you can open up all the slots on your calendar. You're still going to feel broke. And that's what people don't tend to understand. Most private practice owners are not profitable right now. The few who are profitable somewhere are usually around 10 to 20% profit, right? So if you have $100 of a session, maybe you get to keep $10 in your bank account after it's all said and done. But guess what? Because those numbers are dynamic, they change all the time. If something goes up 1%, 2%, 3%, before you know it, now you're in the hole. A lot of times when I sit down with therapists and I go through their profit and loss statements with them, and this is what I do in my business, right? I go through those profit and loss statements and I look for where are they missing money? Where are we losing money? Where can we move some stuff around and actually generate some more revenue? When I'm looking at that, a lot of times we find out they are losing money on every single session. They're not profitable. They're losing money. And this is why I stand 10 toes down and defend group practice owners all the time, because most of them are carrying a full caseload and supplementing the practice operations because there's not enough profit because they agreed to give somebody 60% and they couldn't even afford it. So you have got to know what revenue is coming in, what expenses are going out, what you want to pay yourself or your staff for payroll, and then what is left is your profit. Those 4 things, if you do not know those for your business, you will never be able to be financially secure because you will always be chasing the next session. Okay? Now, why did I create the sprint? I created the sprint because we are currently in a climate where the insurance companies and the tech platforms are doing everything in their power to never pay your cash pay rate and to cut your contracted rate. So we're going to already talk about what you can do instead to make your numbers make sense, to make the math really math, because what we were able to do in our practice is what I'm teaching in the sprint. We have a practice that does that is unusual in the counseling game, right? So we have a group practice. Our CEO does not have a clinical caseload at all. She does not see one one-to-one client at all. She still gets a paycheck every 2 weeks, just like everybody else does. Our therapists get higher than the average rate in our community. I literally just saw a posting in our community for $23 an hour for a substance abuse counselor. I said, the devil is a lie. We are able to pay our staff well above the average. I think the average is somewhere between like $35 and $40 an hour, and we are able to pay our therapists well above the average for our community. And the reason we're able to do that is because we made a decision to diversify our revenue. And we do not only depend on insurance. We do accept insurance, but we do not only depend on insurance. We have contracts, we have retainers. What I need everybody to understand is they're going to keep up with the shenanigans. They're going to keep doing this. And so if you don't have ways outside of your traditional one-to-one counseling, if you don't have some ways to diversify your revenue and to create some leverage for yourself, you are going to have a harder and harder time because the insurance companies and the tech platforms are both going to keep crunching down on you, trying to squeeze those rates lower and lower. So we have been able to get contracts. We have been able to create partnerships and relationships where other people go out and get grants and that pay us. And that has been so helpful for us. That is exactly what I'm going to be teaching in the sprint. Part of why this is so beneficial is that when you build out the contracts, when you launch a digital product, when you launch a course, when you, start doing speaking engagements, any of these things that you might do, it brings in cash pay clients. Somebody asked me, how do you get the cash pay clients? This is how you get the cash pay clients. Let me explain to you, maybe one, I'll explain to you two of our different contracts, okay? So we have one contract with the hospital system in our area that we started because they came to one of our webinars that we charged, I think $49.99, something like that. Let's say $47. We charged for that webinar. One of the persons one of the people that works at that company came to that and decided they wanted us to do a training for them. That 1 hour that we did 7 years ago has turned into over $85,000 because they keep having us back to do more and more trainings. Okay. When we got into that organization, we have been trying for probably 2 or 3 years to get in network with their private insurance because they had a private insurance for just they're big enough that they had a private insurance for just their hospital system. And we're like, we want to be in network with you. We want to be down. And they're like, oh, we don't need anybody right now. Once I got the contract with them, I said, hey, do you know anybody over in credentialing? Because I would like to get credentialed. Because, hey, since we're going to be here teaching and training, if somebody were to decide they wanted to come to our counseling practice, we would want them to be able to use their insurance. She said, of course, connected. And within 60 days or less, we were in network with them. They pay our full fee rate. So we were able to get people that now come directly through this pipeline. They see us speak, 50, 60, 80, 100 people see us speak at this training. And now they're like, oh, I want to go to that office. Cash pay clients. Now, obviously, some of them use their insurance too, but that's one way that we get cash pay clients. Okay. Another way that we do this is we have partnered with organizations who either want us to be their private EAP or want us to come on site or want us to do something for them where they don't have to build their insurance. So it's just like a perk. And a lot of times small to medium-sized companies will do this because when they try to go to the major companies, they don't have enough staff to get a contract with the major companies. So they'll sometimes partner with the smaller company, right? We charge them our cash pay rate. So that's two specific ways that we can make things more accessible for our community without it costing us anything. But it starts because we made the investment to diversify our revenue, to start doing the speaking engagements, the webinars, the lunch and learns, right? To write the books, right? To do these different things. And these are all things that you can do as a therapist today. And I'm going to say something that most people won't tell you. A lot of the insurance have never allowed associates to bill. And several of them have already announced that within the next 12 months, they are no longer going to allow associates to bill insurance. So some of the ones that always have are saying that they're stopping it within the next 12 months. So it's going to be harder and harder for a private practice owner to even get an associate a reasonable salary because they're not going to be able to bill insurance for it. So we got to think outside of the box. And the great thing is, and I know a lot of people think about this, well, I shouldn't have to work all these different jobs. Here's the great thing. You can take less one-to-one sessions when you start to do these other things. right? So like I said, my CEO doesn't have a caseload. She does one contract. We have one contract that is one of our concierge clients. She does one contract, and that is not a full year, and that is not a 40-hour work week. She's probably averaging somewhere around 15, 18 hours max, right? So she doesn't have to see anybody one-to-one. Excuse me. She doesn't have to bill anybody's insurance. She doesn't have to worry about no clawbacks. And so this is the type of thing that you can do. I'm going to walk you through identifying your specific thing that you can offer. There is not a therapist that is on this live stream that doesn't have at least a dozen skills that they could use to generate some revenue right now. Let me tell you some of the things that I have done that made the math for me, okay? I have recorded videos. I have created curriculums. I have taught classes. I have recorded a podcast, right? I have created products. I have a couple of digital products right now that I have like on Teachers Pay Teachers. Every so often I have a sale. I did that stuff 10 years ago. And it's still every so often be like $5, $10, $20 will just pop in my bank account. So there's not a single person on here who doesn't have a dozen things that you could possibly do right now. And let me tell you this other piece. You probably have people in your phone right now, in your email Rolodex right now, that you have people that are technically on your resume right now that already are looking for something that you have to offer or could offer, and you just haven't put yourself out there to actually get that money from them. One of my contracts that I'm going to say it was definitely over $50,000 over a course of a couple years, but it came from a former supervisor. So she was a supervisor at one of my jobs that I had, one of the part-time jobs that I had. I left that job, right? And when she got to her next job, she called me and said, "Hey, we are getting ready to do this project. We thought you might be able to do it." I think the first time was maybe $4,000 or $5,000. The second time was like 13 or 14,000. I think the third time was 27,000. Have been working with them for over 4 or 5 years, because you already have the knowledge that you have. You already have the skill. You already have the perspective. What you don't have is the packaging. And what I'm going to give you in the sprint is the packaging, right? I'm going to show you how to package what you know. I'm going to show you how to position what you know. And most importantly, I'm going to show how to market what you know. Because if you market in the right way, you'll be able to attract those cash pay clients. You'll be able to attract those clients who can pay you. Like we had when we did that training all those years ago that ended up getting us like the $85,000, right? We had somebody who said, "I want you to train my staff on this." And so we had a webinar, but she bought like 10 seats to the webinar. So sometimes other people will pay on behalf of other people. One of the things that we have for our practice all the time, like we have, like we'll have employers and they don't offer health insurance because they can't afford the health insurance premiums, right? But they'll say, "Hey, we really, she's going through a hard time. We want to just cover our employees, like we want to cover her sessions for the next 3 months or whatever." And so they'll put a credit card on file. We make sure that they have a release of information, and we'll go ahead and get that cash pay rate. If you are positioned in the right way, if you are visible in the right way, these are the kind of things that you can attract for yourself. This is what we're going to teach in the More Money, Less Grind sprint. Okay. So the sprint is kicking off on Sunday night. So Sunday night is the live kickoff. Okay. And I want you to be in the live kickoff room, because somebody that's in that room on Sunday night is going to win a free one-on-one session with me. Okay. My one-on-one sessions, my one-time sessions are $1,200. That is what I charge for them. And somebody's going to win one of those on Sunday night. I have been blessed to give one away earlier this year. The person that I gave it away to earlier this year made $4,000 extra the next month. Okay. So what I bring to those sessions is very, very valuable, and somebody will win one of those on Sunday night. Monday morning and every day for the next 28 days after that, you're going to get a drop in your email that says, "Hey, your drop is here." And that is what you're going to do for that day. Each day, it will be what I call a micro step, somewhere between 5 and maybe 20 minutes max, a simple step for you to take to get you closer to launching your idea. Could be a coaching offer, could be a speaking offer, could be a consulting offer. Drop a comment if you know. So I see several. Somebody says several ideas, right? Everyone who follows step 1 through 28 will be able to have an offer ready to go into the world, maybe to make you money within 28 days by day 28. I have done this numerous times. I have taught people how to do what I call a cash injection offer. And in under 2 weeks, they've made $2,000. Okay. I have people that I'm currently working with, coaching clients that I'm working with right now, who've launched a group offer, who are launching intensives. It is the way that I teach it. It is incredibly possible for you to do this without being overwhelmed, even if you don't have a ton of time, because I have wasted a lot of time in my life doing busy work. And now I don't do that. I'm going to tell you how to leverage AI. I'm going to include how to leverage some AI in there. And I'm going to show you how to create the offer, like to be able to put it out into the world before you build it. That's my specific strategy that I teach. I'm not going to let you sit up and record 48 modules, okay? Some of y'all have been recording, editing, writing, revising for the last 10 years, and you haven't launched the first thing. It's all sitting on your desktop. We're not doing that anymore. I'm going to show you how to put it out into the world so you can start getting paid for it and then build it while you are waiting to launch it. What I teach people how to do is to ask the audience what they want, to build up the momentum for the thing that you're getting ready to release. Some people will start to pay you because here's the thing. If you already have some existing clients, some of the things that you want to offer, people are already begging for. They're already begging for it. You just haven't figured it out yet. And so when I walk you through this, you'll be able to figure out what are the people actually looking for? What do the people actually want to buy? We'll price it the right way. That's important. I help you build your audience so you can be more visible, and then you'll be able to launch it. Okay. So there will be a couple of days where you can jump into a live, what I call hot seat. Like if you have questions, you want feedback, there'll be a couple of those, but everything else is on your own time. Right. So if you need to do it at 5 a.m., because that's when your husband and your kids are asleep, do it at 5 a.m. If you need to do it at 10 p.m. because you're a night owl, do it at 10 p.m. But it is completely self-paced. But each drop is just a little nugget for you to do. And this is the way that we kind of break this down so it doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel like you're getting bogged down or behind. But the drops are going to be in Thinkific, and you should get like an email when they come out. So you'll get an email from Thinkific. But those will happen once a day, and they'll be just so much fun when they get added in, and people will be able to take action. And I want you guys to be talking about it too. I want you to share your feedback. In 2026, as the insurance companies are making it harder and harder for you to get credentialed, some of them are just refusing to credential people now. Okay. So you might be like, well, I want to accept insurance, but they won't take me. Okay. They're making it harder and harder for you to have a livable rate because they are not only not raising your rate, some of them are cutting your rates and slashing them, right? You have to have at least one offer that does not depend on them. Because what would happen if they decided that they didn't want to pay you for 30 days? What would happen if they decided they didn't want to pay you for 60 or 90 days? Right? So we want to have an offer that works around them. And in general, this is actually better for you and for the clients. And if any of this information that I gave you today about your, finding your numbers and the mathing has been complicated, I'm going to put this recording into the Sprint portal as a bonus. So you can go back if you didn't get a chance to run your numbers. If you don't know what your your cash pay rate should be, if you're not sure what your cost per session is, you can go back and slowly work through these numbers because I'm going to put all of that in the portal so you can see that as a little bonus for everybody too.